On the hospital sheets lay Kang Ji-hoon, the most feared Korean mafia boss on the East Coast, his lips turning blue and heart monitor flatlining. The doctors had tried everything. Defibrillators. Experimental drugs. Emergency procedures. But nothing worked. Ji-hoon's second-in-command was already reaching for his gun, ready to execute everyone in the room for failing to save his boss. But then she stumbled in, Sienna Hayes, the exhausted black maid who'd been scrubbing floors downstairs. She didn't know about the drama. She was just bone-tired and collapsed onto the nearest surface, which happened to be the dying mafia king himself. And that's when the impossible happened. The heart monitor beeped. Once. Twice. Ji-hoon's eyes flew open. And nothing in their worlds would ever be the same. Hey beautiful souls. If you love forbidden romance, dangerous men with soft spots, and strong women who don't back down, you're in the right place. Smash that like button, subscribe, and hit the notification bell because this story is about to take you on an emotional roller coaster you'll never forget. Drop a comment telling me, Team Forbidden Love or Team Runaway? Now let's get into this story. Sienna Hayes had exactly $104 to her name when she took the job at the Westwood estate. The employment agency hadn't mentioned who owned the sprawling mansion in the hills overlooking the Hudson River. They'd simply said the pay was $800 a week, cash, no questions asked. For a woman sleeping in her 10-year-old Honda Civic and rationing dollar-menu burgers, it was a miracle she couldn't afford to question. She should have known something was wrong when the agency made her sign a 12-page NDA. The mansion was the kind of place she'd only seen in movies, all marble floors, crystal chandeliers, and artwork. But Sienna wasn't there to admire the scenery. She was there to work, and the head housekeeper, Mrs. Pak, made sure she understood that from minute one. You clean the east wing, second and third floors, the elderly Korean woman had said in heavily accented English, her eyes sharp despite her age. You see nothing. You hear nothing. You speak to no one. Especially not Mr. Kang. You understand? Sienna had nodded, too tired and hungry to care about cryptic warnings. That was 3 weeks ago. In those 3 weeks, she'd learned a few things. 1. The Westwood estate wasn't just a mansion. It was a fortress. Armed men in expensive suits patrolled the grounds 24/7. 2. The other staff members, all Korean, avoided her like she carried the plague. They spoke in rapid Korean around her, fell silent when she entered rooms. 3. Kang Ji-hoon, the man who owned all of this, was someone even hardened criminals whispered about with fear. And 4. She was pregnant. Sienna had taken the test in the mansion's staff bathroom on her second week, watching the 2 pink lines appear with a mixture of terror and resignation. The father, her ex-boyfriend Derek, had kicked her out when she'd refused to help him sell drugs to her college classmates. She dropped out of nursing school, lost her apartment, and now carried a baby she had no idea how to provide for. But she was a fighter. Always had been. Her grandmother, God rest her soul, had raised her to be strong. Baby girl, she'd say, the world's gonna try to break you 1,000 different ways. But you're a Hayes woman. We don't break. We bend, we adapt, and we survive. So Sienna worked. She scrubbed floors until her knees ached. She cleaned bathrooms, dusted priceless vases, and changed silk sheets on beds she'd never be allowed to sleep in. She avoided the mysterious Mr. Kang and his dangerous-looking associates. She saved every penny, planning her escape to somewhere safe before her pregnancy started showing. Everything was going according to plan. Until the night everything went wrong. It was 2:47 a.m. when the alarm started blaring. Sienna jerked awake in her small room in the staff quarters, heart pounding. Shouts echoed through the mansion, Korean words she didn't understand, but the panic in them was universal. She should have stayed in her room. Should have locked the door and hidden until morning. But old instincts died hard. She'd been pre-med before Derek had derailed her life. She'd volunteered at emergency rooms, done crisis response training. When she heard someone screaming, "Doctor! Doctor!" she moved. The third-floor master wing was chaos. Men in suits crowded the hallway, some shouting into phones, others checking weapons. Mrs. Pak was crying, being held back by 2 guards. And through the open double doors of the master bedroom, Sienna saw them, 6 people in white coats surrounding a massive 4-poster bed. No one stopped her as she slipped inside. They were too focused on the man on the bed. Kang Ji-hoon. Sienna had never seen him up close before. She'd caught glimpses, a tall figure in expensive suits, dark hair, sharp features that could have belonged to a model if not for the coldness in his eyes. The whispered conversations among the staff painted him as a monster. A king of the underground who'd built an empire on fear and blood. But the man on the bed didn't look like a monster. He looked like he was dying. His face was pale, almost gray. Sweat soaked through his black silk shirt. Monitors beeped frantically around him while the doctors worked with desperate efficiency. His heart rate is dropping. Blood pressure's crashing. We're losing him. Sienna watched, frozen, as they used a defibrillator. Once. Twice. The man's body jerked with each shock, but the monitors showed what her trained eye already knew: it wasn't working. Again, one doctor shouted. We've hit the maximum safe dosage. I don't care. Do it again. The smell of burning flesh filled the room as they shocked him a third time. Fourth. Fifth. The heart monitor's beep became a single, sustained tone. Flatline. No. A man pushed through the crowd, young, Korean, with a scar running down his left cheek. He grabbed one of the doctors by the collar. You fix him. You fix him now or I kill everyone in this room. The doctor, an older white man with trembling hands, shook his head. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. There's nothing more we can. The sound of a gun cocking silenced everyone. Sienna's survival instincts finally kicked in. She needed to leave. Now. Before this turned into a bloodbath and she became collateral damage. But as she turned to slip out, the room spun. The exhaustion she'd been fighting for weeks, the malnutrition, the stress, the pregnancy, it all hit her at once. Her vision blurred. Her knees buckled. And she fell forward, right onto the massive bed, right onto the corpse of Kang Ji-hoon. Get her off him, someone shouted. But before anyone could move, the impossible happened. The heart monitor beeped. Everyone froze. It beeped again. And again. A steady rhythm that grew stronger with each passing second. Sienna, barely conscious, felt the chest beneath her cheek rise and fall. Once. Twice. A heartbeat thundered under her ear, strong, powerful, alive. What the hell, one of the doctors whispered. The man beneath her, Ji-hoon, drew in a long, shuddering breath. His eyes opened, unfocused at first, then sharpening with predatory awareness. And then those eyes, dark, intense, terrifying, locked onto Sienna's face, inches from his own. For a moment, the entire room held its breath. Then Ji-hoon spoke, his voice rough and deep, in perfect English. Who the hell are you? They pulled her off him immediately. Sienna stumbled backward, caught by rough hands that shoved her toward the wall. Her head was still spinning, her body screaming for rest, but adrenaline kept her upright. Kang Ji-hoon sat up slowly, looking like a man who'd just returned from the dead, which, technically, he had. The doctors swarmed him immediately, checking vitals, shining lights in his eyes, asking questions in a mixture of Korean and English. Your heart stopped for nearly 4 minutes. This is medically impossible. We need to get you to the hospital. Enough. Ji-hoon's voice cut through the chaos like a blade. Everyone went silent. His gaze swept the room, passing over his men, the doctors, Mrs. Pak, and landing on Sienna. She'd never felt so exposed in her life. He was beautiful in a dangerous way, sharp jawline, high cheekbones, eyes that seemed to see straight through her. Even sitting on a bed after nearly dying, he radiated power. Authority. Danger. You, he said, pointing at her. Come here. Every instinct told her to run. But the men blocking the door made it clear that wasn't an option. Sienna lifted her chin, channeling her grandmother's strength, and walked forward on shaking legs. Ji-hoon studied her with unsettling intensity. What's your name? Sienna Hayes. Her voice came out steadier than she felt. I'm one of the housekeepers. What were you doing in my room? I heard the alarm. I thought, she hesitated. I have medical training. I thought I could help. One of his men, the scarred one who'd threatened the doctors, scoffed. A maid with medical training? You expect us to believe. Ji-hoon raised a hand, silencing him. You fell on me. It wasn't a question, but Sienna nodded anyway. I'm sorry. I was exhausted and I collapsed. I didn't mean to. Do it again. Sienna blinked. What? You heard me. Ji-hoon leaned back against the headboard, his expression unreadable. Whatever you did, do it again. I didn't do anything. My heart had stopped. His voice was matter-of-fact, like he was discussing the weather. These 6 doctors, who are the best money can buy, couldn't restart it. Then you fell on me, and it started. So either you have some medical miracle in your pocket, or something about your physical contact with me caused the reaction. The lead doctor, still pale, stepped forward. Mr. Kang, this is highly irregular. We should run tests, understand what? Test your theory after she does it again. Ji-hoon's eyes never left Sienna's. Come here. This was insane. Impossible. Hearts didn't just restart because someone touched you. That wasn't how biology worked. But Sienna had seen the flatline. Had felt his chest go still. Had felt it start again when she'd collapsed on him. With the whole room watching, she approached the bed. How do you want me to? However you were before. Heat crept up Sienna's neck. Before, she'd been unconscious, sprawled across him like he was a body pillow. The memory made her stomach flip. Carefully, awkwardly aware of every eye on her, she climbed onto the massive bed. Ji-hoon lay back down, his expression neutral, waiting. Sienna positioned herself beside him, then slowly, feeling more vulnerable than she'd ever felt, rested her head on his chest. His heartbeat was strong under her ear. Steady. Normal. Well, the scarred man demanded. His vitals are stable, one of the doctors reported, watching the monitors. Ji-hoon's voice rumbled in his chest, vibrating against Sienna's cheek. Move away. She scrambled off him, putting several feet of distance between them. For about 30 seconds, nothing happened. Then Ji-hoon's hand went to his chest. His breathing became labored. Heart rate dropping, a doctor called out. Blood pressure falling. Back. Now. Ji-hoon's command was directed at Sienna. She didn't move. This was crazy. This was impossible. Now. The urgency in his voice spurred her forward. She threw herself back onto the bed, pressing against his side, her hand landing on his chest. The change was immediate. His breathing evened out. Color returned to his face. The frantic beeping of the monitors returned to a steady rhythm. Extraordinary, one of the doctors whispered. Sienna felt Ji-hoon's hand come up to rest on her back, holding her in place. His voice was quiet, meant only for her. It seems, Miss Hayes, that you and I have a problem. Wait. Are you breathing right now? Because I'm not. Drop a comment telling me what you think is happening. Is it magic? Fate? Some kind of medical miracle? And if you're loving this story, share it with your friends who love romance with a dangerous twist. Okay, let's see what happens next because things are about to get intense. They ran tests for 3 hours. Blood draws. Heart monitors. CT scans. Every time they separated Sienna from Ji-hoon for more than a few minutes, his heart would start to fail. And every time they brought her back into physical contact with him, it would stabilize. By dawn, the doctors had no explanation. It's like nothing I've ever seen, the lead doctor, Dr. Morrison, told Ji-hoon in the mansion study. Sienna sat in a chair in the corner, exhausted, confused, and increasingly terrified about what this meant for her future. There's no scientific basis for this, Dr. Morrison continued. No precedent in medical literature. The closest comparison would be cases where emotional support animals help regulate heart patients, but that's psychological, not, he gestured helplessly. Whatever this is, it's beyond my expertise. Ji-hoon sat behind his massive desk, looking like death hadn't even slowed him down. He'd changed into a fresh suit, all black, expensive, tailored perfectly to his broad shoulders. His dark hair was slicked back, and in the morning light, Sienna could see he was younger than she'd thought. Mid-30s, maybe. Best guess, Ji-hoon said. Dr. Morrison hesitated. Some kind of bioelectric compatibility? The human body generates electrical fields. Hearts run on electrical impulses. Perhaps Miss Hayes's field somehow synchronizes with yours, stabilizes it. But I've never heard of such a strong effect, and I can't explain why it would happen suddenly, or why it's specific to her. How long can I be separated from her? The question made Sienna's blood run cold. Based on our tests, maybe 5 to 10 minutes before symptoms start. 20 minutes maximum before it becomes life-threatening. Silence filled the study. Sienna found her voice. This is temporary, right? Whatever this is, it'll go away? Dr. Morrison looked at her with pity. I have no idea. Then we find someone who does, Ji-hoon said. Dr. Morrison, I want specialists. Whatever this costs, whatever strings need to be pulled, I want answers. Of course, Mr. Kong. After the doctor left, Sienna and Ji-hoon sat in silence. The enormity of the situation was crushing. She was tied to this man, this dangerous, criminal man, by some inexplicable biological leash. I need to leave, she said quietly. I have a life, I can't just. What life? Ji-hoon's question was blunt, not cruel, but it still stung. That's none of your business. You're living in my staff quarters. Working for cash under the table. You have no family, no emergency contact listed in your employment file. He leaned forward. You're running from something. Or someone. Sienna's jaw tightened. Still none of your business. It is now. He stood, walking around the desk to stand in front of her. Up close, he was even more imposing, 6 feet of controlled power. Like it or not, Miss Hayes, your body is the only thing keeping me alive. That makes you the most important person in my world right now. So either you tell me your situation, or I have my people investigate. Your choice. She wanted to tell him to go to hell. Wanted to walk out and never look back. But she'd seen the guns. The guards. The way everyone in this house jumped when he spoke. And beneath her fear, there was something else. A strange, unwanted awareness of the man in front of her. The way he looked at her, not with the dismissive glance she was used to from wealthy men, but with focus. Like she mattered. It had been a long time since anyone had looked at her like she mattered. I'm pregnant, she said. Whatever Ji-hoon had expected, it wasn't that. His expression flickered, surprise, calculation, something else she couldn't read. The father? Gone. He kicked me out when I wouldn't help him deal drugs. The words tasted bitter. I lost my apartment, dropped out of nursing school. I've been living in my car and trying to save money too. I don't know. Figure something out. How far along? About 8 weeks. Ji-hoon was quiet for a long moment, processing. Then, here's what's going to happen. You'll move into the room adjoining mine. You'll have access to whatever you need, food, clothes, medical care for you and the baby. In exchange, you stay close enough to keep me alive while my people figure out what's causing this. I'm not a prisoner. No, he agreed. You're an employee. A very well-paid one. I'll give you $10,000 a week for your cooperation. Sienna's breath caught. $10,000 a week. That was more money than she'd ever imagined. Enough to save for the baby. Enough to start over when this was done. But nothing came free, especially not from men like Kang Ji-hoon. And if I say no? His smile was sharp. Then you're condemning me to death. And my people are very loyal. They won't let me die, Miss Hayes. Which means one way or another, you're staying. I'm just offering to make it comfortable for you. It wasn't a choice. Not really. But at least it was a well-paid prison. Fine, she said. But I want it in writing. The money, the medical care, and a guarantee that I can leave once you find a cure for whatever this is. Done. Ji-hoon extended his hand. Sienna stared at it, strong, calloused, with scars on the knuckles that spoke of violence. The hand of a man who'd built an empire on blood. She shook it anyway. His grip was warm, firm, and sent an unexpected jolt through her system. From the way his eyes widened slightly, he felt it too. Welcome to the Westwood estate, Miss Hayes, he said quietly. Something tells me our lives just got very complicated. The room adjoining Ji-hoon's master suite was bigger than any apartment Sienna had ever lived in. A 4-poster bed with silk sheets. A marble bathroom with a soaking tub. A walk-in closet that had been filled, overnight, with clothes in her exact size. Designer labels she'd only seen in magazines. How did you? She started to ask Mrs. Pak, who was helping her settle in. Mr. Kang very thorough, the older woman said, her previous coldness replaced by cautious respect. You need anything, you tell me. You important now. Important. Because a dying man needed her to stay alive. The connecting door between her room and Ji-hoon stayed open. Always. They'd tested it that first day. Closed doors didn't affect whatever this was, but distance did. If she was in her room and he was in his, they were fine. If she went downstairs while he stayed on the 3rd floor, his heart would start to fail within minutes. 20 feet. That was their leash. They could be 20 feet apart, maximum, before his body started shutting down. It made for some awkward situations. The first morning, Sienna had woken to find Ji-hoon doing push-ups in his room, shirtless, his back muscles flexing with each rep. She'd frozen in her doorway, unable to look away from the dragon tattoo that covered his left shoulder blade and wrapped around his ribs. He'd caught her staring. Like what you see? His voice had been amused, not mocking. She'd fled back to her room, face burning. But she couldn't hide forever. The terms of their arrangement meant spending nearly every moment together. When he worked in his study, she sat in a corner with the books he'd provided. When he had meetings with his men, she waited in the next room with the door cracked. When he ate, she ate, though he'd quickly noticed her avoiding certain foods. The smell bothers you, he'd observed at dinner 3 days into their arrangement. He'd been eating some kind of Korean stew that normally would have smelled delicious, but her pregnancy had made her stomach sensitive. It's fine, she'd lied. The next meal, the stew was gone, replaced by bland foods that didn't trigger her nausea. She hadn't asked him to do that. He did it anyway. It was these small things that confused her. The man was supposed to be a monster. She'd heard the whispered stories from the staff, had seen the dangerous men who came for meetings, had noticed how people looked at him with fear. But with her, he was careful. He made sure she ate enough. Insisted she see the doctor weekly for prenatal checkups. Got her prenatal vitamins, the expensive kind. Left books about pregnancy on her nightstand without comment. "Why are you doing this?" she'd asked one night, a week into their arrangement. They were in his study, him reviewing documents written in Korean, her reading a novel. Doing what? Being nice. The vitamins, the books, the food. Our deal is just about keeping you alive. You don't have to do all this extra stuff. Ji-hoon set down his papers, giving her his full attention. You're carrying a child while tethered to a stranger in a world you don't understand. The least I can do is make sure you're both healthy. Most men in your position wouldn't care. I'm not most men. No, she agreed quietly. You're a crime lord. He didn't deny it. Does that scare you? It should. It absolutely should. But sitting across from him in the warm study, watching the firelight play across his features, Sienna found her fear had dulled into something more complicated. Sometimes, she admitted. Other times. I don't know. I won't lie to you about what I am, Sienna. It was the first time he'd used her first name. My business isn't legal. I've hurt people. Made decisions most would consider evil. But I have rules. I don't harm innocents. I don't touch drugs or human trafficking. And I protect what's mine. I'm not yours. His eyes held hers. Aren't you? The question hung between them, loaded with implications neither was ready to address. Sienna looked away first. This is temporary. Once your doctors figure out what's wrong. And if they don't? They will. But another week passed. Then two specialists flew in from around the world, cardiologists, neurologists, researchers in bioelectric fields. They ran every test imaginable. Found nothing. Whatever bound Sienna to Ji-hoon, it was beyond current medical understanding. And the longer they spent together, the stronger it seemed to get. By the third week, they developed a rhythm. Mornings, Ji-hoon would work out while Sienna did yoga, a habit she'd picked up to manage stress. He'd installed a yoga mat in his room without her asking, positioned where she could practice while staying close. Afternoons were for business. She'd sit in on his meetings now. He'd long since stopped trying to hide that part of his life from her. She heard things that would probably get her killed if she ever repeated them. Learned that his organization controlled most of the East Coast's underground economy. That he had connections that reached all the way to Seoul, to other syndicates, to politicians and police. She should have been terrified. Instead, she found herself fascinated by the man who ran it all. Ji-hoon was brilliant. She saw it in how he negotiated, how he strategized, how he kept multiple complex operations running smoothly. He was ruthless when he needed to be, but fair. His people were loyal not just from fear, but from respect. Evenings were the hardest. That's when the professional distance they maintained during the day would soften. They'd have dinner. He'd learned her preferences, what her pregnancy cravings wanted, what made her nauseated. Then they'd retreat to the study or sometimes just to his room, and they'd talk. He told her about growing up in Seoul, the son of a mid-level crime family enforcer. How he'd been sent to the US at 15, worked his way up from nothing. Built an empire by being smarter and more ruthless than everyone else. She told him about her grandmother raising her in Detroit after her parents died. About dreaming of becoming a doctor. About Derek, and how stupid she'd been to think he loved her. Not stupid, Ji-hoon had said. Young. There's a difference. I'm 23. I should have known better. You're 23 and you've survived more than most people twice your age. He'd leaned forward, intense. You dropped out of school to protect your principles. Lost everything and still kept fighting. You're not stupid, Sienna. You're strong. No one had ever called her strong before. Not like that. Not like it was the most obvious thing in the world. She'd gone to bed that night with tears on her cheeks, not quite sure why. The first complication came on a Tuesday. Sienna was in her 4th month now, just starting to show. Ji-hoon had noticed immediately, his eyes tracking to her small bump with an expression she couldn't read. They were in his study when Kim, the scarred second-in-command, burst in without knocking. We have a problem, he said in Korean. Sienna had picked up enough over the weeks to understand basic phrases. Problem. Danger. Enemy. English, Ji-hoon said sharply. You know the rules. Kim's jaw clenched, but he switched languages. Park's crew hit our warehouse in Queens. 3 of our guys are dead. He's making a move. Sienna saw Ji-hoon's expression go cold. How bad? Bad enough that you need to show your face. Remind everyone who runs this city. Kim glanced at Sienna. But that's complicated now. Because Ji-hoon couldn't go anywhere without her. And walking into a gang war while pregnant was suicide. I'll go, Ji-hoon decided. We take her with us. Full security. No. Sienna stood. Absolutely not. I'm not going anywhere near. You don't have a choice. Ji-hoon's voice was flat. I can't leave you here. If someone attacks the mansion while I'm gone, you're defenseless. You stay with me, you stay safe. Safe? You're talking about walking into a war zone. And if Park thinks I'm weak, that I can't respond because of you, it becomes a war zone. Every rival I have will see an opportunity. He stood, moving to her, his hands gentle on her shoulders despite the hardness in his voice. I know you're scared. But I promise you, I will protect you. Both of you. Trust me. She wanted to refuse. Wanted to scream that this wasn't what she signed up for. But looking into his eyes, she saw the truth. He was right. In his world, showing weakness meant death. And like it or not, she was part of his world now. Fine, she whispered. But if anything happens to my baby. It won't. The conviction in his voice was absolute. An hour later, Sienna found herself in a bulletproof SUV, sandwiched between Ji-hoon and Kim, heading into Queens. She wore a Kevlar vest that Ji-hoon had personally fitted, one designed for pregnant women, acquired in the hour since he'd made the decision to bring her. How he'd gotten it so fast, she didn't want to know. The warehouse district was exactly as terrifying as she'd imagined. Burned-out buildings, men with guns, the smell of smoke and blood in the air. Ji-hoon's crew had secured a perimeter. In the center stood a group of Korean men she didn't recognize, Park's people, she assumed. And in the middle of it all, an older man with silver hair and a smile that made Sienna's skin crawl. Kang Ji-hoon, the man, Park, called out. I heard you were sick. Heart problems, they say. How unfortunate. Ji-hoon stepped out of the SUV, and Sienna was pulled along by Kim's firm grip. They stayed close, within the 20-foot boundary, but tried to keep her partially hidden behind the vehicle. I'm feeling much better, Ji-hoon replied, his voice carrying across the space. Well enough to discuss why you thought attacking my operations was a good idea. Just testing the waters. Park's eyes found Sienna, narrowing. I see the rumors are true. You're keeping a pet. A pregnant one, at that. How, domestic. The insult in his tone made several of Ji-hoon's men reach for their guns. Ji-hoon raised a hand, stopping them. My personal life is none of your concern. My territory, however, is. You crossed a line tonight, Park. The question is whether you're smart enough to step back before I respond. You? Respond? Park laughed. You can't even take a piss without your little nurse nearby. You're weak, Ji-hoon. And weak men don't keep empires. The silence that followed was deafening. Then Ji-hoon smiled. It was the most terrifying expression Sienna had ever seen. Kim, he said quietly. The building on the left. How many of Park's men inside? Thermal imaging shows 6. And the right? 4. Take them out. All of them. Make sure Park watches. What happened next was brutal. Efficient. Terrifying. Ji-hoon's men moved like a military unit. Within 3 minutes, gunfire erupted and then stopped. Kim spoke into his radio, then nodded to Ji-hoon. Done. Park's confident smile had vanished. Ji-hoon walked forward, closing the distance between them. You mistook caution for weakness. I keep Mississippi Hayes close because she's valuable to me. But don't confuse that with being unable to do my job. He stopped inches from Park's face. You killed 3 of my people. I just killed 10 of yours. We can keep going until you have no one left, or you can accept that this city is mine and get back in line. Choose. Park's jaw worked. Finally, it won't happen again. No. It won't. Ji-hoon turned his back on him, the ultimate show of dominance, and walked back to the SUV. To Sienna. His hand found hers, squeezing gently. Let's go home. In the SUV, Sienna's hands shook with adrenaline. She'd just watched men die. Watched Ji-hoon order their deaths without hesitation. This was his world. This was who he really was. But when he pulled her close, murmuring apologies for exposing her to that, checking her over for injuries she didn't have, making sure the baby was okay. She saw the other side of him too. The man who protected what was his with absolute ruthlessness. And somewhere along the way, she'd become his to protect. God help her. After the Queen's incident, something changed between them. Ji-hoon became more protective, almost possessively so. He increased security around her, had Kim personally vet every doctor and staff member who came near her, started insisting she stay in his room at night rather than her own. It's safer, he'd said. If someone attacks in the night, I need you close. It was a thin excuse, there were armed guards everywhere, but Sienna didn't argue. Because she didn't want to. The truth, the terrible truth she'd been avoiding for weeks, was that she'd started to feel safe with Ji-hoon. More than safe. When he was near, when she could hear his steady breathing at night, feel his presence in the room, the constant anxiety she'd lived with for months would quiet. She was falling for him. It was insane. Impossible. He was a criminal. A killer. Everything she should run from. But he was also the man who'd spent 3 hours researching pregnancy nutrition to make sure she got the right foods. Who'd listened to her talk about her dreams of becoming a doctor and then secretly enrolled her in online pre-med courses so she could finish her degree. Who'd held her hair back the one morning her sickness got really bad and never mentioned it again. Who looked at her like she was precious. The physical awareness had been there from the start, that strange electric pull whenever they touched. But now it was becoming harder to ignore. Like the night she'd woken from a nightmare about Derek, about being homeless and alone. She'd been crying before she fully woke, and suddenly Ji-hoon was there, pulling her into his arms. You're safe, he'd murmured into her hair. I've got you. You're safe. She'd buried her face in his chest, breathing in his scent, expensive cologne and something uniquely him. His hand had stroked her back in soothing circles, and she'd felt her racing heart slow to match his steady rhythm. When she'd finally pulled back, their faces had been inches apart. She'd seen the exact moment his control had cracked, the way his eyes had dropped to her lips, darkened with want. His hand had come up to cup her face, thumb brushing her cheek. Sienna, he'd whispered, and her name had never sounded like that before. Like a prayer. Like a promise. She'd leaned in. So had he. Their lips had almost touched. And then he'd pulled back. No, he'd said roughly. Not like this. You're emotional, you're vulnerable. I won't take advantage. What if I want you to? Then tell me again in the morning. When you're thinking clearly. He'd forced himself to move away, putting distance between them. Sleep, Sienna. We'll talk tomorrow. But tomorrow had come and gone, and neither of them had mentioned it. The tension, though, that had only grown. She'd catch him watching her with hunger in his eyes. She'd find excuses to touch him, a hand on his arm, sitting closer than necessary. The air between them crackled with unspoken desire. It couldn't last. The breaking point came on a Friday night, 5 months into their arrangement. Sienna was in her second trimester now, the pregnancy undeniable. But she'd never felt more beautiful, because Ji-hoon looked at her like she was a goddess. They'd had dinner, he'd cooked, something he did sometimes, Korean dishes he'd modified to suit her preferences. Afterward, they'd ended up on the couch in his room, watching a movie. Or pretending to watch. Really, they were hyper-aware of each inch of space between them. Sienna, Ji-hoon said suddenly. We need to talk about this. About what? Don't. His voice was strained. Don't pretend you don't feel it. This thing between us, it's getting harder to ignore. Her heart hammered. Maybe we shouldn't ignore it. He turned to face her fully. You understand what you're saying? What it would mean? I understand that I feel safer with you than I've ever felt with anyone. That you've shown me more kindness in 5 months than most people have in my entire life. That when I think about the future, about raising this baby, I can't imagine doing it without you. She took a shaky breath. I understand that I'm falling in love with you, and it terrifies me, but I can't seem to stop. Ji-hoon's control shattered. He pulled her to him, careful of her belly, and kissed her like a man drowning and she was air. Sienna melted into him, her hands fisting in his shirt, kissing him back with all the pent-up longing of the past months. I love you, he breathed against her lips. God help me, I love you. From the moment you fell onto my bed and brought me back to life, you've been mine. My miracle. My salvation. Then have me, she whispered. I'm yours. I've been yours. What followed was tender and passionate and perfect. Ji-hoon worshipped her body like she was sacred, careful of her pregnancy, attentive to every sound she made. And when they finally came together, Sienna felt something she'd never experienced before. Complete. Whole. Like 2 pieces of a puzzle that had finally found each other. Afterward, lying in his arms, his hands splayed protectively over her baby bump, Sienna knew there was no going back. She'd fallen in love with a mafia king. And he'd fallen just as hard for her. For 3 weeks, they existed in a bubble of happiness. Ji-hoon was attentive, loving, protective to the point of being overbearing. He'd hold her every night, talk to her growing belly, make plans for the future like it was certain they'd have one. Sienna had never been so happy. She should have known it couldn't last. The threat came in the form of a phone call. Ji-hoon had been in a meeting, Sienna in the adjacent room as always, when his phone rang. The look on his face when he'd answered had made her blood run cold. He'd spoken in rapid Korean, his voice tight with an emotion she'd never heard from him before. Fear. When he'd hung up, he'd immediately ordered Kim to triple security, lock down the mansion, move Sienna to the panic room. "What's happening?" she demanded as he'd rushed her through the halls. "My enemies know about you. About how important you are to me." His jaw was clenched. "There's a price on your head. $5 million to whoever brings you to them." The panic room was a reinforced bunker beneath the mansion. Ji-hoon had sealed them inside with Kim and 4 other guards. "They're coming," Kim reported, monitoring security feeds. 20 men. Maybe more. Well armed. "How long can we hold?" Ji-hoon asked. "Against 20? Maybe an hour before they breach." Ji-hoon pulled Sienna close. "I've called for reinforcements. They'll be here in 40 minutes. We just have to last until then." But Sienna saw the worry in his eyes. 40 minutes was a long time in a firefight. The first explosion rocked the mansion 10 minutes later. Sienna clutched Ji-hoon's hand, her other hand protectively over her belly. The baby, their baby, because somewhere along the way she'd started thinking of it as theirs, kicked frantically, responding to her fear. "It's okay," Ji-hoon murmured, holding her. "I won't let anything happen to you. Either of you." The gunfire started. Screams echoed through the security feeds. Ji-hoon's men were dying protecting them. 25 minutes in, Kim got the news, "They've breached the first level. We need to move." But there was nowhere to go. The panic room had one exit, and it led into a hallway that was surely compromised. "There's another way," Ji-hoon said suddenly. He moved to the back wall, pressed a hidden panel. A passage opened, dark, narrow, leading into tunnels beneath the estate. "It leads to the East Gardens," he explained. "We can escape, get to the backup vehicles." "You can't run," Kim interrupted. "If you run, you look weak. Every enemy you have will come for you. You have to stay and fight." Ji-hoon looked at Sienna. At her belly. At the woman carrying his heart. "Then you take her. Get her out. Keep her safe." "No." Sienna grabbed his arm. "If we separate, your heart. I'll risk it. Your life, the baby's life, that's more important. You'll die. Better me than you." His voice broke. "Don't you understand? You and that baby, you're everything. You're the only good thing I've ever had in my blood-soaked life. I won't watch you die because of me." Tears streamed down Sienna's face. "And I won't watch you die for me. We stay together. We fight together." "Sienna." "No." She was firm now, channeling all the strength her grandmother had given her. "You told me I was strong, remember? Let me be strong now. We face this together, or not at all." Ji-hoon stared at her for a long moment. Then he pulled her into a fierce kiss. "Together," he agreed. "Always." They emerged from the tunnel into chaos. The East Garden was a battlefield. Ji-hoon's reinforcements had arrived early, thank God, and were engaged with the attackers. Bullets flew, men screamed, blood soaked the pristine grass. Ji-hoon pulled Sienna behind cover, shielding her body with his own. Kim and the guards formed a protective circle. "We need to get to the vehicles," Kim shouted over the gunfire. They moved as a unit, fighting their way through the chaos. Sienna stayed low, heart pounding, praying for her baby's safety. They were 10 feet from the armored SUV when she saw him. Derek. Her ex-boyfriend, the one who'd kicked her out, stood among the attackers with a gun in his hand. He saw her at the same moment. Saw her belly. Saw Ji-hoon protecting her. His face twisted with rage. "You fucking bitch," he screamed. "You left me for him? You're carrying his baby?" Everything happened in slow motion. Derek raised his gun. Aimed at Sienna. Ji-hoon saw it. Moved without hesitation, throwing himself in front of her. The shot rang out. Ji-hoon grunted, stumbled. Blood bloomed across his white shirt. "No." Sienna's scream was primal. Kim shot Derek, 3 bullets to the chest, dropping him instantly. The other guards intensified their assault, driving back the attackers. But Sienna only had eyes for Ji-hoon. He'd collapsed against the SUV, hand pressed to his chest. Not where the bullet had hit, lower, his heart. No, 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 Sienna sobbed, dropping beside him. Stay with me. Please stay with me. Can't, his breathing was labored. Separated too long. Hearts failing. Because he'd thrown himself away from her to take the bullet. Sienna pressed herself against him, her hands on his chest, willing whatever mysterious force connected them to work. Come back, she begged. Please, Ji-hoon, come back to me. I love you. Do you hear me? I love you. You can't leave me. You can't leave us. His heart monitor, always on him now, showed an erratic rhythm. Fading. I love you, she kept saying, like a prayer, like a spell. I love you, I love you, I love you. The world around them was still chaos, but in their bubble, there was only them. His hand came up to touch her face. Love, you, both. His eyes closed. The monitor flatlined. No. Sienna screamed. Come back. You promised. You promised you'd protect us. You can't do that if you're dead. Come back. She pressed her entire body against him, heedless of the blood, the bullet wound, everything. Her hands over his heart, her forehead against his, her love pouring out of her in waves. Please, she whispered. Please. I need you. We need you. Come back to me, my love. Come back. For a terrible moment, nothing happened. Then. A beat. Weak, but there. Another. Stronger. Ji-hoon's eyes fluttered open, unfocused, pained, but alive. Sienna. I'm here. She was laughing and crying at the same time. I'm here. I've got you. You're not allowed to die on me, you understand? You're not allowed. Wouldn't dream of it. Kim was there suddenly, helping them into the SUV. We need to move. Now. The ride to the hospital was a blur. Sienna never left Ji-hoon's side, never stopped touching him, never stopped willing him to stay alive. The bullet had missed his vital organs, a miracle. But combined with the stress on his heart from separating from Sienna, it had nearly killed him. Nearly. But not quite. Because Sienna had brought him back. Again. 3 months later. Sienna sat in the hospital room, exhausted but glowing, holding a tiny bundle wrapped in soft blankets. Her daughter. Their daughter. She had Ji-hoon's dark hair and Sienna's warm brown skin, and she was absolutely perfect. Ji-hoon sat beside the bed, his arms still in a sling from the gunshot wound that was slowly healing. He stared at the baby with wonder, like he couldn't quite believe she was real. She's beautiful, he whispered. Like her mother. She has your nose, Sienna said, smiling. Poor thing. Hey. She nudged him gently. I love your nose. He leaned over to kiss her, soft, sweet, full of love. The months since the attack had been transformative. Derek was dead. The enemies who'd targeted Sienna had been dealt with. Ji-hoon had made it clear to every criminal organization on the East Coast that Sienna and the baby were untouchable. Anyone who even thought about threatening them would face consequences that made death look merciful. No one had been stupid enough to test him. And the mysterious connection between them? Still unexplained. Still there. But they'd stopped fighting it. Dr. Morrison's best theory was that it was some kind of unprecedented bioelectric phenomenon, that Sienna's specific electrical signature synchronized with Ji-hoon's damaged heart in a way that kept it functioning. Why it had started that night, why it was so strong, why it was specific to her, those remained mysteries. Maybe it's fate, Sienna had suggested one night. Maybe it's magic, Ji-hoon had countered. Or maybe, she'd said, kissing him, it's just love. Whatever it was, they'd learned to live with it. Ji-hoon had restructured his entire operation to work remotely when needed, to minimize situations that required separation. Sienna had finished her online degree and was planning to start medical school next year. Ji-hoon had offered to fund it entirely, but she'd insisted on a payment plan, keeping her independence even as she'd given him her heart. They'd gotten married a month ago. A small ceremony, just Kim and Mrs. Pak as witnesses. Nothing fancy, Sienna in a simple white dress, Ji-hoon in a black suit, both of them barefoot on the beach at sunset. I'm still a criminal, he'd told her before the ceremony. That won't change. My world is still dangerous. I know, she'd replied. But it's our world now. And I'm not going anywhere. Now, watching him hold their daughter for the first time, seeing the dangerous mafia king reduced to tears by a 7-pound baby, Sienna knew she'd made the right choice. What should we name her? Ji-hoon asked softly. They discussed it but never decided. Grace, Sienna said suddenly. Grace Mi-sun Kong. Grace, for the grace that had brought them together against all odds. Mi-sun, beautiful goodness in Korean. Kong, because she was part of both their worlds now. Perfect, Ji-hoon agreed, his voice thick with emotion. She's perfect. You're perfect. How did I get so lucky? You died and I brought you back to life, Sienna teased. I'd say that makes us even. He laughed, then grew serious. I love you. More than I thought I could ever love anything. You saved me, Sienna. Not just my heart, my soul. You made me want to be better. You made me strong enough to believe I could be more than my circumstances, she replied. You gave me a home. A family. A future I never thought I could have. Little Grace squirmed in Ji-hoon's arms, making a tiny sound. She's hungry, Sienna said, laughing. As she fed their daughter, Ji-hoon's hand rested on her shoulder, and Sienna marveled at the journey that had brought them here. From a desperate maid living in her car to the wife of the most powerful man in the criminal underworld. From a dying crime lord to a man willing to change his entire world for love. It shouldn't have worked. By all logic, they should never have found each other. But fate, or magic, or science, or love, had other plans. And as Sienna looked at her family, at the man whose heart literally beat in sync with hers, at the daughter who represented their impossible love made real, she knew one thing for certain. She would do it all again. Every hardship. Every fear. Every moment of uncertainty. Because it had led her here. To home. To love. To forever. 1 year later. Mama. Mama. Sienna looked up from her medical textbook to see Grace, now a year old and walking, toddle into the study at full speed. Well, full speed for a 1-year-old, which meant arms outstretched, chubby legs pumping, and a huge grin on her face. Behind her, Ji-hoon followed, looking both exasperated and endlessly amused. She's supposed to be napping, he said. And yet, she has her father wrapped around her tiny finger, Sienna replied, scooping Grace up and covering her face with kisses. Can you blame me? Look at that face. Grace giggled, reaching for Ji-hoon, who took her immediately. The fearsome mafia king was absolutely hopeless when it came to his daughter. How's studying? He asked, settling onto the couch beside Sienna with Grace in his lap. Good. I have an exam next week, but I think I'm ready. She was in her first year of medical school now, studying remotely with occasional on-campus requirements that Ji-hoon attended with her, much to the shock of her classmates, who couldn't figure out why this beautiful black woman always had a stern-looking Korean man hovering within 20 feet. Let them wonder. Kim called, Ji-hoon said. The situation in Baltimore is resolved. Resolved. Which meant his people had handled a threat without violence this time. Ji-hoon had been slowly transitioning his organization toward more legitimate operations. It would take years, maybe decades, but he was committed to building a legacy Grace could be proud of. That's good, Sienna said, then paused. Actually, there's something I wanted to talk to you about. Should I be worried? Maybe. She bit her lip, nervous. Remember how Dr. Morrison said our connection was unique? Unprecedented? Yes. He wants to study it. Formally. Publish research. He thinks understanding what's happening with us could revolutionize cardiac medicine. Ji-hoon was quiet for a moment. That would mean going public. People knowing about us. About what we can do. I know. And if you're not comfortable. Will it help people? He interrupted. If we let them study us, could it save lives? Morrison thinks so. If they can figure out what's causing our connection, they might be able to replicate it. Develop new treatments for heart conditions. Ji-hoon looked at Grace, who was playing with his fingers, oblivious to the weight of the conversation. A year ago, he said quietly, I would have said no. Would have protected our secret at all costs. But you've changed me. Made me think about legacy differently. About using what we have to do good. He turned to Sienna. If this can help people, if it can save lives the way you saved mine, then yes. Let's do it. Sienna's eyes filled with tears. I love you. I love you too. He pulled her close as they could get with a toddler between them. Always. Grace chose that moment to grab both their faces, pulling them together for a sloppy baby kiss that landed mostly on their chins. They laughed, and in that moment, Sienna felt overwhelming gratitude. For the mysterious force that had bound her to Ji-hoon. For the love that had grown from impossibility. For the family they'd built against all odds. For the future they were creating together, one where a mafia king learned to be gentle, where a struggling woman found her strength, and where two broken people became whole. Some love stories are gentle. Some are easy. Theirs was forged in darkness and danger, in medical mysteries and mafia wars, in the space between heartbeats and the warmth of an embrace. But it was theirs. And it was perfect. Oh my God, I'm literally crying. Drop a comment telling me how you're feeling right now because I need to know I'm not the only one sobbing. Did you love Sienna and Ji-hoon's journey? Do you believe in fate bringing two people together? And most importantly, do you want more stories like this? If you enjoyed this emotional roller coaster, please hit that like button, subscribe to the channel, and share this with someone who loves romance with danger, heart, and soul. Your support means everything and helps me bring you more stories that are unique.